after I talk about Cuba, since I have you here, would it be okay if I asked you a couple of questions about the construction, the new construction, or is that something that you wouldn't want to talk about at all?
No, we don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that might be something that Janet would like to talk about more than me.
Sure. We could just change
Or
gears.
if it's general, I mean.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I'm not going to ask
Okay.
super detailed questions. Just
I can jump in if,
sounds pretty.
direct Chris if he says anything wrong. I'm sure you won't.
We're using telephones instead of cranes.
Right, that's funny.
All right, Chris, I want to make sure that I have the right levels for you. Can I get you to tell me your name and spelling and title, please?
Sure. I'm Chris Minner, CHRISMINNER, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing at Tampa International Airport.
All right, very good. Let's start out with just a little bit of background about the Cuba situation. The United States and the governments of the United States and Cuba have decided to try to thaw relations. What does that mean for the Tampa International Airport?
Well, starting in September of 2011, we actually kicked off, for the first time in 50 years, nonstop flights between Tampa and Cuba. And those flights have been incredibly successful. In fact, since their inception, we've had 160,000 people have flown on those flights between Tampa and Havana and Holguin and Santa Clara. Just in the last year, there's been a 32.9% increase in passengers that are traveling between the two places. And that's driven by a couple of things. One is we're home to the third largest population of Cuban people of Cuban ancestry living in the United States. And so there's a tremendous demand for people that want to go to Cuba. But with that base of traffic that exists, there's also a lot of people that are not of Cuban ancestry that are interested in learning more about Cuba, and those have been people that have helped to make those flights successful. So as the administration goes back and looks at their regulations, what are we anticipating? We anticipate there's going to be no change to the embargo. So you're going to continue to have to go through a carrier service provider or a travel service provider if you want to travel to Cuba, which is not a big deal. But we do expect that the licensing process is going to be much less complicated. And so for those people in the past that maybe didn't have family in Cuba that were saying, my gosh, I don't know if I can travel to Cuba, it's going to become much, much easier to be able to go. And so I think what that's going to mean for us is the opportunity for additional flights. These flights have been a tremendous boon for Tampa International Airport. We've generated about $1 million a year in incremental revenue from the passengers and the airlines that are providing this service. And so we think that that's a tremendous opportunity for growth.
What's the process like for someone who wants to travel there? What are some of the legal ways what are some of the legal reasons that people can go and travel to Cuba, and what kind of hoops do they have to jump through?
Yeah, it's a great question, and in fact, we went to Cuba recently, and coming back and sharing our pictures with folks, one of the things that I heard over and over again is, I wish I could travel to Cuba. And the answer is you can, but because of the perception of the complexity, and it is a little bit complex, I think people just say, well, I'll wait until I can, maybe I'll do something else that's a little bit less work involved. We created a website called gotocuba.org, and it's a comprehensive resource that has all the kinds of travel that people can go to Cuba under, both general licenses and specific licenses. So your question about how can people get there, visiting close relatives is the #1 reason that people right now are traveling to Cuba. But there are other general licenses for official government visits, journalistic activity, professional research, education, religious trips, and then also specifically related to agriculture and telecommunication. These are two industries that are permitted under the embargo to do business in Cuba. And then there are specific licenses, like the people-to-people licenses, that allow regular people like you and I the opportunity to travel to Cuba and interact with people there and to get a better understanding of what's really happening in Cuba. Other things like athletic competitions or even being able to attend conferences and seminars.
Your gotocuba.org campaign has kind of taken an uptick. It's been more visible lately. I've seen billboards on Interstate 275. Are you doing this because because of the recent changes by the two governments.
Yeah, well, that's the latest in a series of things that we've done to try to raise awareness of these flights. We had already done a pretty active campaign around gotocuba.org, and that was back in June of 2013. So we were able to reactivate some of those elements, and we took those live on December 17th, the day that President Obama made the announcement. And I'll tell you that we saw about a 1,000% increase in the traffic going to gotocuba.org. And now that it's leveled off, we're getting about 300 unique visitors a day. And it's traffic that's coming in from all over the country. And these are people that are really interested in for the first time, maybe making that first trip to Cuba.
And that might come through Tampa, as opposed to before people might have thought, oh, I'll have to go to New York first, or I'll have to go to Miami first. But it sounds like you might be getting people that will first come to Tampa and then go to Cuba.
Tampa International Airport has so many strategic advantages to be able to serve this traffic. Number one is the population base. We have 120,000 people of Cuban descent that live within a 90-minute radius of Tampa International Airport. But we also have incredible facilities. Right before these nonstop flights to Cuba started, we spent $27 million improving every element of the international arrival experience. And so they're better than anything you'll see anywhere in the country. And beyond that, for somebody in, let's say, Wichita or Chicago or anywhere in the country, we've got great nonstop flights, low-cost carriers like Southwest, JetBlue, Spirit, that can bring people here to Tampa International Airport, and they can check in for their flight to go to Cuba and make it really easy. And then the other thing is we've got a really unique Cuban heritage right here in Tampa Bay. And so for the traveler that wants to arrive early, maybe check out Ybor City and some of the Cuban flavor that we have right here for ourselves. It's a tremendous package.
So you've been. Tell people who haven't been why they should be interested in Cuba.
Oh my gosh. You know, as a person having grown up during the embargo, I think that that for myself and for my friends, I never had any expectation that I'd ever have the opportunity to go. And you know, Cuba, it really, it's what you see in the pictures, right? It's a bunch of old cars and it's tobacco fields. But when you dig deeper, Cuba is so much more than that. It's such a rich tapestry of people and an incredible culture, and the technology, organic farming. It's an incredible place to visit. And when you get there, maybe the first thing that really strikes you is how easy it is to get around. I'm a world traveler. That's what I do for a living. So I've spent a lot of time traveling through Mexico and Central and South America. And you know, the first thing you see are guns at the security checkpoint and security details everywhere. There's almost none of that anywhere in Cuba. I think I saw one gun the whole time I was there, and it was a police officer that just happened to be walking down the street. But it was a really wonderful, eye-opening experience that, this is a country that's just off our shore with wonderful people and wonderful opportunities for everybody here in the U.S. to be able to see and experience for themselves.
I'm going to switch gears now from Cuba to maybe a part of the interview that I'll air in the beginning of the next year, and that's to talk about the new construction at Tampa International Airport. What's going on there? What's the timeline? What should we expect to see?
Over the next 3 years, you're going to see Tampa International Airport invest nearly $1 billion in the infrastructure of our facilities, and it's time that we do that. We're going to make improvements to better accommodate passengers that are renting cars at Tampa International Airport. We're going to grow the main terminal, and we're going to completely overhaul all of the concessions at Tampa International Airport as well. What that means is that there's going to definitely be impacts to the passenger experience. We recognize that. But we've got a great team at Tampa International Airport that's working together to minimize those impacts. From a traveler standpoint, make sure that you come a little early to make sure that you can get to your flight on time. But travelers are going to see construction, and they're going to see really well-constructed walls that'll try to keep the construction activity out of their way. We've hired more guest service representatives to help all over the airport, both with our shuttles and down in the baggage claim, to make sure that passengers that just need a little bit of extra help are able to find their way.
Specifically would like to talk about the intermodal transit pavilion that's being built. What can you tell me about transit and getting to the airport and what this intermodal transit facility will be?
Well, one of the elements of the program is a facility that's adjacent to our consolidated rental car center, and that's going to give us the opportunity to accommodate any kind of transportation that the community decides to bring. So first thing is making sure that we can accommodate everything that we have with the scheduled bus services that exist. And we've been very active in working with the regional transportation partners to try to create better linkages, especially for downtown Tampa, downtown St. Pete, and the beaches.
And right now that's buses, but in the future, if either Pinellas County or Hillsborough County or the region decides that there's some sort of fixed line rail system, that this intermodal would probably be a centerpiece of that?
Well, the feature of what we're constructing at Tampa International Airport is that it's flexible and ready to accommodate whatever the community decides to bring.
Those are my only questions about the construction. What would be a timeline of completing all the projects?
We're already trying to plan our grand opening ceremonies for the summer of 2017.
Great, thanks so much for your time.
If you're gonna run this after the first of the year, the early January, if you might wanna talk a little bit more about that, is that what people are gonna really notice in the terminal? It's gonna get crowded. I don't know if you wanna say that, but you said it a little bit, but if you want any more on that, like closing some of our shuttles out to the air side, it'll only be one shuttle instead of two. It's a 2.5 minute wait instead of a 90-second wait. It's just helpful for people to know, I think. When will the shuttles, for example, when will they be closing, part of the shuttle service? When will that be closing? Starting
in January, passengers are going to definitely see the beginning of closures of some of our shuttles. So you'll always have one still operating, but in order to do the complete overhaul and renovation of our facilities, we'll close down one shuttle for each airside for a period of time. So what that means is right now you're waiting for about 90 seconds between shuttles in order to get out to your airside. Now that wait could be about 2.5 minutes.
That's not forever though, that's just during construction.
Thanks, that's fine. Let me save this.
Okay.